Hey, it's Bill from the Bill Simmons podcast. FIFA World Cup 26 fans, listen up. As the official beer sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 26, Michelob Ultra is giving away $1 million worth of FIFA World Cup 26 tickets and prizes. Enter now at michelobultra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26. Michelob Ultra FIFA World Cup 26 superior access, no purchase necessary. Open U.S. residents 21 plus, begins on December 1st, 2025, ends on July 31st, 2026, multiple entry periods. Visit www.michelobultra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26 for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different. And Messi only trusts Duracell.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Yes, rugby's here for real this time. No, none of that barbarians nonsense. And first on the menu is England in a new tournament for the South African rugby team to win. Let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome back to Bit of an Animal. This is the South Africa versus England, Springbok versus England preview, in-depth preview, match 23 pod, coming to you on Friday, the 3rd of July. So tired. It's such a hectic week. I'm joined this week by a new face on the Global Gainline, but not a new face for podcasting. Jacob, tell our audience about yourself.
Hi, Mohammed. Thank you so much for having me on the pod, making my Global Gainline debut. Very, very exciting. Yes, hi, everyone. My name is Jacob. I am a freelance journalist based in England in the UK. I do various bits and bobs. I do a bit of freelance work for local BBC radio. But in terms of rugby, I'm from Leicester. I'm from Leicester, and obviously Leicester Tigers, huge rugby area of the country in the East Midlands. And I'm trying to become hopefully some form of full-time professional in sport media surrounding rugby and various other sports as well. So I am currently the host of the Leicester Tigers Women's Fancast, which is a fans podcast dedicated to the Leicester Tigers women's team. Over the years on that pod, I have had both Hattie and Julia of the Women's Rugby Treehouse, which is part of the Global Gainline network. And I'm also quite good online friends with Hugh, who I think sort of patches together a lot of the Global Gainline. So yeah, very, very excited to be on the show tonight to talk all things about England versus South Africa, and try and contain my excitement for this Nations Championship that everyone is really, really gunning for. So yeah, very excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you're actually wearing a Stormers shirt. I'm sure our Stormers supporters, panelists Bryce and Paul, will be glad to see you wearing that. And shout out to Hattie, because in this series of preview pods, which will be sponsored by Culture Lab Kombucha, more about them a bit later, we'll have yourself on this week, and then next week we'll have Ethan representing Scotland, and then in week 3 we'll have Hattie representing Cymru. Yes, I say Cymru now instead of Wales, because I'm just learning new things all the time. So speaking of the sponsor, let me just quickly give them a plug. Shout out to Culture Lab Kombucha, manufactured here in sunny Cape Town, in Muizenberg. A whole range of delicious flavors. That actually a product that I discovered rock climbing at a rock climbing gym, and I've really stoked that they've come on board. And so shout out to Jason, the master brewer there, gave me a tour of the facility when I went to go pick up some cans. And shout out to owners Amy and Jacques for this awesome product. You can get it in wild daha, lemongrass, Boku rooibos. Boku is I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's a, small fragrant bush found in sort of the Platteland area, and everybody obviously knows rooibos, confettibos, and then lion's mane. I don't know how I pronounce those last parts, but Amy, if you're watching this, send me a voice note so I can pronounce this correctly. But they also have another more recent flavor in Shashandra al Amla, elderberry. See, I know how to spell elderberry. Cam Camu. So I've sampled most of them, and I look forward to sampling all of them throughout the series of I do have a can of lemongrass here, so I'll be having that with. I always like to have it in the sort of cup with ice that I got from my grandma. Shout out to her, and that's how I like to have my beverages. Um, Jacob, have you ever tried kombucha?
I have not. I don't know if it's something that's available in the UK. If it is, I will try and find it. It definitely. I'm liking the sound of some of these beers. I think you did a much better pronunciation than I did. I don't think people want to sort of hear butchered English pronunciations of words in the various wonderful, lovely languages of South Africa. But yeah, if I see it in England, I'll sure to give it a try.
Yeah, thankfully they are all non-alcoholic, but they're quite enjoyable. Also, Jason, before we move on, are you familiar with the word daha, what it translates into English? I don't know how many South African friends you have.
No, it's not. It's not something
Yeah,
I'm familiar with.
yeah, it's the colloquial word for cannabis in
Aha.
South Africa. But
Okay.
thankfully, there's no THC or alcohol in any of these cans. Yeah, so we'll get cracking. So shout out to Culture Lab. We'll get cracking on. We like to start these preview shows, Jacob, before we get to the match 23s, vibes. So I know you're the away team, but we'll start with you. What are the vibes going into this game? Springboks versus the Poms at Ellis Park.
Well, thank God it's such a big match, I think, to kind of kick off this nations championship for both England and South Africa. I think
Yeah.
for England it's very interesting because obviously everyone knows the Six Nations for England was broadly pretty terrible. It was obviously a fantastic tournament. Everyone was beating everyone. Italy beat England for the first time, which was huge for the tournament, really, really huge. But from an English perspective, considering the run of form that we were on, I think we're on a win of sort of 12 or 11 wins on the bounce going into the tournament. England were considered one of the favourites, obviously, alongside France going into the tournament. And yeah, for there such to be sort of a twist of fortune was initially very surprising. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously, um, there were moments, England could have very easily have won that game versus Italy. That came down to a moment of outstanding world class talent and power from Menoncello. If that wasn't him, Italy weren't winning that game. Because there's no one else in the Italian team that can do what he did. That there's very few players in the Northern Hemisphere that can do what Tommaso Menoncello can do. So that there were moments where England were kind of just on the wrong side of results, and there is always an expectation with England, whether that's generated by the team, whether that's generated by the press, whether that's generated by the fans. I think I think obviously the team got caught out. I think they were believing their own hype a little bit. They were too focused on this so-called Grand Slam decider that was going to happen in Paris in France. And they just forgot about the games to come before them. And yeah, obviously they go into this match against South Africa really sort of unknown, what's going to happen. Are they going to bounce back? Obviously that defeat against France was full of positives. It was really, really close. But I think as we break down the match itself, I'm not personally confident that the way that England approached that game sort of tactically would work against the Box at Ellis Park. So yeah, it's a frustrating time. For me personally, like I was also saying to you before we record, as we were talking why I was wearing a Stormers shirt. I'm not a frothing die-hard English fan. I'm culturally, I am English. I'm not even someone who is English with Welsh or Scottish or Irish heritage. Like I'm English, both sides of my family, both sides of my parents' family and stuff. But I'm not a fervent national supporter. So that means that I probably always have quite a glass half empty, glass half full approach. And I think I have that with England at the moment. Like it's not as bad as what everyone's saying it is, but I don't think we're probably in the position where people thought we were going into the Six Nations, that we're going to kick on and perhaps challenge not only this Nations Championship, but obviously the World Cup next year in Australia.
Interesting. Um, yeah, it's almost like a fresh start for you guys because your
Hmm.
season is interesting because you have the Six Nations earlier in the year, then you have these July tests, then you have the November test. From a South African perspective, our season starts now and it goes for about 6 to 6.5 months till the end of the year, ending in July. So it should end late November. And if you're not counting the Barbadians game, then it's a 13 game season, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the fixtures more recently, but yeah, we've got a jam-packed schedule because we go from these three games: England, Scotland, Wales, so all the UK teams. Then we had a little bit of break, and then we play Australia, I believe, or Argentina. And then four games against New Zealand, then Australia or Argentina, one of those two again, and then the next three European games, including a game against Ireland. So some people are like, oh, they're not so sure about this tournament, but I think it probably robs us of like in this period in the June time, South Africa might have seen maybe England or Ireland or Wales, anybody, but then play three tests on the bounce as opposed to individual teams.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect, so that robs sort of a Northern Hemisphere team from coming down here and playing multiple games. It's all just one-off fixtures, but I'm excited. It's just another. So it's like I like rugby, so it's just another sort of. I don't have any misgivings about this tournament. I'm really sort of looking forward to seeing how it sort of pans out, and it's every 2 years. It's not every year, that type of thing. So it's going to be a very interesting season for South Africa, but it starts with England, and it's not going to be easy because yes, England had an indifferent Six Nations, but it's Test rugby, and I think the vibe of like having lost to Australia last year at Ellis Park when everybody was just like, we'll win, and then they lost. So I think
Mm.
it's a bit more serious this time. And then there's also the additional layer, which we'll talk about on the full panel, a bit of an animal on Monday evening, of we're going to see how many people actually fill into the stadium because
Yes.
Saru, there's a lot of nuance to that of Saru trying to balance the books whilst also maybe pricing out just working class fans, which is very, very difficult. Very sort of unsightly for me, that type of thing. I think there needs to be a balance of trying to make money and but yeah, we'll get into that on Monday. We'll jump into the match 23s now, Jacob. I'll bring it up on the screen for you and the viewers to see, but we'll also talk through it for the audio listeners. Um, Give us your thoughts on this very interesting sort of mixed bag for the England team, and also give us some insight into maybe who's missing through injury.
Yeah, I think just quickly on the Ellis Park thing, I think the SRU have kind of come out and hit back at criticisms that it's not going to be very, very full. I think they've done like a last minute deal, and I think that's sold a few tickets. So at least it will
Mm.
be um, somewhat full, which is great because um, test matches at Ellis Park are obviously I've never had the privilege of being there in person, but sort of witnessing it on YouTube or on the telly, like it's such an iconic rugby venue. And then when I see highlights of a Lions game in the URC and it's got one man and his dog, it's just not the same. But yeah, I think in terms of England, obviously the headline is George Martin being back for England after a long time out with sort of injury. That's going to be quite sort of tactics wise. There's been a lot of chat, obviously, of Henry Pollock. Was he going to have his first start? He's on the bench, which I think is the right call. The back line is interesting. Stewart, I think, is injured, so Furbank has come in at fullback. I think it's really key that Faye Boso's back, and that's really cool. Caden Murley on the left wing. That's a that seems an interesting call to me. I wouldn't have personally gone for that. Um, Murley is for people who aren't as familiar with sort of Premiership rugby here in England. Murley is sort of your very typical Premiership winger, will score lots of tries and will have lots of London journalists throwing their arms in the air and going, "Why is this player not playing for England?" They play for England and soon find out that they're only really a Premiership level of player, and that's potentially a bit harsh. But you look at the wingers available to England and you go, "Is really Caden Murley your best option on the left-hand side?" So yeah, the other interesting call is obviously Ollie Chesham, who is Leicester's captain, usually a second row. He's been kept at six after playing there for England against France. That went really well. That gives England a bit of power. And yeah, I think England, there are some injuries, but by and large, they've gone for the biggest pack they can possible at the moment to try and take on the box. So there's going to be some really tasty clashes in the pack, I think.
Can't believe it took us 10 minutes to mention Henry Pollock. We gotta manipulate the YouTube algorithm by just mentioning him because him and Sash Feinberg and Gomezulu really sort of draw a lot of attention. They've got a high Q rating, is my understanding. Um,
Mm.
Interesting. Beno Obano and Asha on the bench as props. Give us some
Mm.
insight on that. We don't know that much about them.
Yeah, so Abano plays for Bath. I've actually always been a huge fan of Abano, and I've always been a bit curious he hasn't seen more minutes for England. He has had his injury troubles, which hasn't helped him. Um, he is the teammate of Thomas du Toit at Bath, and he's a hell of a unit. I mean, you're not going to easily push him over in a scrum. My goodness, and he's devastating, sort of from 2 meters out from the line, in a very similar vein to Thomas du Toit, although he's not been getting as many hat tricks as Thomas the Tank Engine. But yeah, I think he comes in for loose head. You talk about props, that is where England do have some injury issues. Will Stewart, who was obviously on the Lions tour last year, he is still out with an injury. Trevor Davison for Northampton, he's out injured. So they're a bit bare bones at the moment at tight head, which, yeah, so they've had to call up sort of Asher Apoku for jaw, who can play both loose head and tight head. So yeah, it's going to be a particular big test, I think, for those two guys coming off the bench. But I think particularly having a Barner there smart because if he's coming on and Detroit's still on the pitch, like he's someone who knows Detroit inside out because he trains them every week at Bath. And yes, that's going to be quite interesting. Keeping with props, your listeners might not be aware, but Joe Hayes plays for Leicester, has had an absolutely outstanding season for both club and country. In a pretty torrid Six Nations, he was one of the few shining lights. He has been scrumming out of his skin this season, and yeah, he will certainly face a huge test in Ox. But I suspect that he will make it a hell of a test for Oxenche and Steinkamp off the bench. So I think an area where there will be parity is potentially the front row, particularly in the first half, because again, just such an incredible scrummager as well as a ball carrier. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the front row battles kind of impact who can sort of dominate on the game on the day.
Gonna be interesting because I want to hear your thoughts on the 6-2 split. There's a lot of talk of Ben Earls possibly being plugged in at inside center in an emergency, that type of thing.
Hmm.
Do you think this was the right the move from Borthwick?
Yeah, I think with obviously he's gone for the biggest pack he can in the starting lineup, and I think what he's trying to do is he is trying to kind of emulate the strategy that was pioneered by the box of the bomb squad strategy of like your forwards completely empty the tank 50 minutes and then we'll bring on the reinforcements who can then kind of match that tempo, and he's doing that, albeit with the resources that Borthwick has at his disposal. As I said, there has been some injury problems Maro Itoje has been rested for good reason. I think that's a good call. So Cowan Dickey, Abano, Apoka for Jaw can give you impact around the bench, as obviously Henry Pollock can. Sort of Yules and Pepper are less flashy players, but kind of just allow someone like Alex Coles to just completely empty the tank, and then he can come off, be replaced by Yules. And yeah, I'm is All's top five lock forward in England? Probably not, but he is someone who has been in around the England team for a long, long time, and with these people being out, with as I say, Mara Tojo being rested, yeah, yours is that option. So I think 6-2 split. I would be very surprised if Ben Earl would be forced to move to the centre. Um, I think my issue with the 6-2 split is I'm not a Marcus Smith at fullback fan. I don't think it brings out the best of him. I don't think he enjoys it particularly. And yeah, I think it's that is potentially the issue, because it's kind of obviously he's the replacement halfback, and it's does he come on for Furbank? Does he come on for Finn Smith? Does he come on for one of the centres and then Tommy Freeman moves to the wing? Does he come on for Feo Boso, but then Freeman goes to the wing and he goes to inside centre? Like I don't really see what's Smith's role there and how that's going to work with a 6-2 split.
Interesting. Final thought, question for you on England. Am I to understand that Jamie George, this will be his final season in Test rugby, or is he still going to stick around till the World Cup?
Good question, because Jamie George announced his retirement really early in advance.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he is sticking out to the World Cup or not. If he is, then yeah, I think he's a really good asset to have. I'm intrigued by him being retained as captain. I know Itoje succeeded him as England captain, but in Ellis Genge, who has vice captain England on many occasions, I think has captain once, has been sort of the captain of Bristol, captain of Leicester beforehand, was captain under Borthwick when Borthwick won the Premiership with Leicester. And then Ollie Chesham, who has been Tigers club captain this season, he has been excellent in that role. I I potentially would have more leaned towards one of those two guys being given the captaincy in Itoje's absence rather than George. But I don't, for one second, I don't think George is not an able captain. I think he's a very calm-headed person, very experienced rugby player now, and yeah, I think England fans will be sad when he does eventually retire from international rugby. But yeah, I think he's sort of shot himself in the foot by announcing so far in advance that he's going to retire at some point that people are confused as to actually when he is going to retire.
I did say that was the last question for England, but of course I seem to have forgotten the question about Bernhard Janssen van Rensburg is in the England
Ah,
squad, but is not
yes,
picked. Ben 10, who I came to know when him and Reno Smith, shout out to Reno Smith, who's Italian, is impeccable
yes,
on all those things, playing out there for Benetton. Reno
great
Smith,
player.
who I met back in the day. I met him at the Shark Supporters Club because he did play for us alongside Ben Jansen van Rensburg when him and Ben Jansen van Rensburg joined us from the Leopards, having played quite well for the University of Potchefstroom. But then they both moved on. Ben Jansen van Rensburg playing for Bristol Bears looked really good in the Champions
Yeah,
Cup for Bristol Bears against the Bulls.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
would have loved him to come back. Very spoken quite often in the media about his first choice would have been to play for the Springboks. And I see he's
Mm.
speaking this week saying he did speak to Bernard Jansen van Rensburg, and he told him he could be in the system, but he's not guaranteed a spot. So how stoked are you to get this like phenom of a of a player?
Yeah, the Bernard Janssen van Rensburg thing is an interesting one. I I appreciate his honesty. I think it's really I admire his honesty that he is like I'm a proud South African. It would mean everything to me to represent my country, but the circumstances have dictated that I will be playing for another country. I think you do see some players who Jack Dempsey's a bit similar for Scotland. Obviously played for Australia and has now switched to Scotland, and he's been very clear that he's doing it for professional reasons rather than a love of Scotland necessarily. It's interesting that he wouldn't have been able to have forced his way into the South African system. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are some sort of centre injury issues maybe at the moment, or a bit of a question mark over the depth of centre in the Springboks. I don't know if that's would you agree with that necessarily?
Inside center, maybe kind of. I mean, Ethan Hooker's injured, so the depth chart would be
Yeah,
Andre Estesen, who's like a utility forward slash back, and then obviously Damien Del Andy. But neither of them are super young. They're still playing really well for their age, by the way. And then
yeah,
after them, it'd probably be Ethan Hooker, but he's injured. And then, as I mentioned, Lucanio Am did play the at inside center. He did play there against the Barbarians, and then there's also Ethan Adams and who we'll get to later from the Junior World Cup. So I
yes.
think from a Shark supporter's point of view, I um was quite happy to see him flourish in Europe, and I was like, oh, hopefully he comes back because he's playing well. And yes, we have Ethan Luca and we have Andre Stays on the books, but he could also fit in somewhere else in the team. But yeah, we wish him the best. Awesome player, by the way. It's great to see him sort of develop from sort of a young player into like this phenom that he is now. Okay, so from the
Mm.
South African perspective, we'll go through the team for the audio listeners. So it's Damien Willemse at fullback, Chisholm Colby on the wing, Jesse Krill at outside center, Damien Del Andy inside center, Kurtley Arnott on the other wing, Mari Lebok, the de facto best fly off we have right now with Shasha Fireman and Zulu injured and Andre Pollard being sort of more on the veteran side, maybe makes an impact off the bench here and there. Grant Williams at nine. Grant Williams plays for my team the Sharks, but is moving to Japan soon. Didn't play much at all this season for us. Jasper Visser, Peter Toy and Siya Kolisi in the back three options. Arguably our first choice, but is there really a first choice? Rowan Nokia, who's had a long season for the Bulls. Recently lost quite convincingly in the URC, unfortunately. Even it's a bit a second game back since trying to eye gouge a Cymru player, a
Yep.
Welsh player,
Yep.
and the last game he played. Between that is he played 45 minutes for the Sharks against Connacht in Galway, and then he
Wow.
hurt his
Okay.
hip. So he hurt his hip, so he couldn't play till then. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on and see just how fit Ibn Elizabeth is. Thomas the Tank du Toit, when last did I see Thomas the Tank du Toit in person? It was at 2016 in Wellington when he was playing for the Sharks in the Currie Cup. He is very wide human being. So glad to have him back at the Sharks, by the way. Malcolm Marks starting
Yes.
at hooker, and then Oxen Che, another Shark at Lucid prop. On the bench, we've got utility forward Jan Hendrik Wessels, man of sort of suspension fame. Gerard Stenekamp is Bulls compatriot, and then young Zachary Porthen, a very young tight head prop. Marco van Staden, interestingly, no outright what would you perceive to be an outright lock on the bench. So it's Marco van Staden,
Yeah, interesting
guy who can
that.
play open side, blind side, and hooker. So like flank, open tight, yeah, open side flank, blind side flank, and then hooker. Um, Form number eight of the URC, Cameron Hanekom, Kobus Reinach, Andre Estesen, and Kenan Moodley. So that is a 5-3 split from the Springboks. So what stands out for me when I saw this team being announced on Monday, by the way, take note, Steve Borthwick. um, I do understand that certain teams do make announcements in different, and it's more likely that the away team will make the announcement later. So don't take too much
Well,
offense, Steve.
I
Um,
was surprised that Borthwick left his team lineup
that
announcement so
late.
late because he usually is quite an early announcer. Usually in the Six Nations, Tuesday, Wednesday, Borthwick, bam, here's my England team. So maybe a little bit of mind games there that he sort of
Hmm.
waited for as long as possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that. Could be also that they're playing in a different continent and stuff. Although I will say, when you look at the especially the upload that the England social media did recently, where they were showing like what recovery meal they were having, and they were having like sushi and like chicken wings and stuff. It makes you think like, why couldn't we all be professional rugby players? Because that food looked delicious. But that's neither here or there. When I saw the game. Sorry, when I saw this team sheet on Monday, I was like, go big or go home. I anticipated this type of team because all due respect to Scotland and Wales, um, instead of it building up to a more challenging match, it was sort of like ramping down. So I anticipate also to see a few more rotations from this team to the Scottish team to facing Wales. Um, Unfortunately, in the camp, we also do have to mention that Springbok junior Springbok captain Riley Norton got hurt earlier this week. He got a grade 3 hamstring. He's out for 10 weeks, so we'd hope to actually see him play in one of these three games. That also ties into our junior World Cup talk a bit later. Um, and then Rassie Erasmus saying this week that the intention actually was to have Riley Norton play one of these three games and then send him back to the Junior World Cup. So that's incredibly interesting. We'll see how that pans out also with Vusi Moyo, but I doubt Vusi Moyo gets sent back to the no, it's not back really, but sent to the Junior World Cup. Considering how many fly half, because Sasha Feinberg and Ngumba is injured, so yeah, we look forward to this game. It's quite late in the evening here by us, but it's a jam packed it's an absolute jam packed Saturday. Let me switch my video back on. How dare I? Absolute jam-packed Saturday of rugby for the both of us, Jacob. Um, we'll do the prediction for this game right at the end so that we can keep
Okay.
people long. Um, but speaking of the Junior World Cup, South Africa played two games. England have played two games. Um, we'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on England's performance thus far?
In the World
Ju
Championships, Junior World
yeah, the
Championships.
Junior World Championships.
Yeah, I think it seems to have been okay. I was really intrigued by that 68-40 performance over the Americans. Because 68 points is obviously quite a heavy scoreline. I don't know whether the Americans got a few late consolation tries, but that was something that caught my eye. Got a couple of games to go. Argentina will be a test, I think. It's interesting with these World Championships. You were talking about the sort of the way that Razzie was kind of trying to integrate some junior box and then filter them back through. That's quite a rare thing actually in England. I can remember, I believe Ted Hill and Ben Curry, I think, have had senior caps for the men's Red Roses, and before being sent back to the under 20s. But that was we're talking sort of like 2017, 2018. I don't think we've really seen that since then. So the level of integration that I think you get between the junior box and the full box, you don't really see that with England currently. Um, it's with the World Championships, it's always very difficult. I think I used to be really into them sort of like 5, 6 years ago. I don't follow them as closely anymore, purely for the fact that I'm obviously I've got like a career degree. My degrees are finished now, but I've got other things to sort of keep me away from that. But I think it's always interesting, like particularly, I think because the English system was very famous for sort of producing a lot of what we'd call flat track bullies in England, or players that were fortunate to be in a certain setup or to go to a certain school because of who their dad was. But as soon as they progressed any sort of higher than World Championship level, they sort of got found out. I think the age grade system is a lot more intricate than that now, but Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of see who dominates and who makes it. I remember Joano Augustus dominating for the junior box sort of around 2017 before he became a big thing, and I was sort of this was a time when I thought, oh, he would be a player that Leicester would absolutely love. He ended up going to Northampton, but has been is now at Ulster, and quite unlucky probably to still not be a full time cap Springbok. But yeah, what would you say would be your sort of perspective on how the junior box have done in the World Championship so far?
Look, it's been an interesting season. We won this tournament. We became world champions, junior world
Yeah.
champions last year for the first time in 10 years. The last time
Mm,
we'd won it, before that, I actually watched the game live at Newlands and the semi-final live. Um, and then we're undefeated still this year. We played two games and then sort of like a warm-up-ish game. So two full-on tests against Georgia in Georgia at the beginning of the season. So we did an away tour. And then we did a three-match home series here in Cape Town, which I was fortunate to go watch all three games at Rondebosch Boys Eye, Wynberg Boys Eye, and then Pollock. So I got to see the team up close and also speak to some of the players. And then there was a bit of disruption now going into the World Cup. Because of players being sort of pulled into the senior setup. The setup at South Africa is there's a bit more continuity now. So between
mm.
the SA schools, which is the under 18 system, the junior Springboks, which is the under 20 system, then the Springbok A's, and then the Springbok senior team. And even sort of like the seven setup and stuff like that. So there have been disruptions. They lost their arguably first choice fly half in Vusi Moyo because he got pulled into the senior team. And there's a sense of like similar to New Zealand that the senior team is the priority. Obviously, World Cup winning captain from last year also pulled away as well. So I'm pleased with the two results. I thought that we would trounce Uruguay. They did put up a fight, very similar to how I watched them play live and nearly put 100 points on Chile. They would have actually put 100 points on Chile, but Visimoya was having a bit of an indifferent day with the kicking in that day. And then I anticipated also that it would be a tight game against Georgia, having watched them play Georgia in the last game at in that home series at Paul Roos. Yeah, but it's super interesting. I would also keep an eye on the Fiji national junior team in this tournament. They're not necessarily as good as, say, their first team. I think their first team is really, really good for
Yeah.
numerous reasons.
Yeah.
But there's some interesting players within that Fiji setup, and yeah, shout out to Rashad Shivinga, who's also a former South African referee. He's sort of in the Fiji setup for the
Oh,
juniors anyway,
cool.
which is weird because I was sitting in Rondebosch Boys. I was sitting in the stands, sitting next to one of the players' dads. Shout out to Altus Rabi's dad. And we were talking, and then I heard somebody shout, "Oh, what? High tackle, ref!" And then I looked behind me and I saw him, and I was like, I know that dude from somewhere. And then later on, realized, oh, that's Rasta Rashvinga, former South African referee. So that's enough junior talk. One more game for both of us in the group stage. Hopefully England meet the junior Springboks in the Junior World Cup. We're gonna have another pod, a special pod like this. We'll pivot shortly, briefly. I know this is a rugby pod, but there's a lot of football going on as well. Unfortunately, Bafana, my South African team, are out of the tournament. We did do quite well. Yes, we lost the first game, and then people started panicking. My friend's wife said, "Oh, we're out now." I had to explain to her, "No, Shan, we're still kind of in it." And then we drew the next game, and then we won the next one, and that actually meant that I anticipated after we lost to Mexico, which is tying into what we're going to talk about later, that we would maybe qualify for the knockout round as like a lucky third place. But instead, we actually qualified second behind Mexico in our group, ahead of South Korea, who everybody thought was going to beat us, and I forget the other team. So shout out to Bafana. Yes, you made it to the knockout round for the first time ever. We didn't even make it to the knockout round when we hosted it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we've got a lot to work on in terms of football in South Africa. There's a lot of aspects that we could do a lot better with, but I'm very proud of the boys. So we played four games, lost one, drew the next one, won the next one, and then we unfortunately lost to a very, very late goal. I didn't watch. I in all honesty, I like football. I mostly like club football. Myself and Kalon have the distinction of unfortunately supporting False Hope FC, colloquially known as Manchester United. But as it relates to the World Cup, I've only ever watched 20 minutes live. I went to a friend and the Bafana game was on, and then we watched the game against Chicha, where we conceded early, but then we drew. So, Jacob, give me your thoughts on your team's still in it. So give me your thoughts while I enjoy a delicious Culture Lab kombucha.
Yeah, the World Cup is very, very interesting. I mean, yeah, you talk about we've lost and we're out. With the knockout stage, with the huge amount of teams now, it's kind of like it's almost very impossible to not progress to the round of 32. I mean, Scotland nearly progressed on limping past Haiti and then being absolutely shocking against Brazil and Algeria or Morocco. I think it was Algeria. Um, so or was it Morocco? It was one of the two. It was one of the two North African teams that Scotland were terrible against.
Don't
So
worry, I can't tell them apart either.
yeah. So yeah, I think from an English point of view, the yeah, really good performance against Croatia. The I the Ghana result was quite predictable. That sort of had draw written all over it, and then yeah, we got past Panama, and yeah, at one point I thought because obviously we faced the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the round of 32, and obviously they were ahead really early on in the game, and we had to chase that lead. So I'm not, as I said earlier in the preview, I'm from Leicestershire, and yes, obviously Leicester City won the Premier League, but I would still say we're pretty rugby union country over football. I'm not a massive football fan, but I enjoy watching I say I enjoy watching England men, but I do quite like watching sort of the Euros and the World Cup when it's on for both the men's and the women. And yeah, I wouldn't say I have a huge amount of knowledge of football, but it's good that we've progressed, I think, to the round of 16. I think that's a good result. And yeah, we've got Mexico away in at the Aztec Stadium at altitude. So it'll be really interesting to see if Thomas Tuchel or anyone at the England football team kind of did go to the RFU and go, well, you're very used to playing rugby at high altitude. Any tips to say like how can we do sort of the similar against the Mexicans? The Mexicans have lost twice there in like 60 years. And the way that England approached the game, very pass heavy, very reliant on trying to stretch the defenders as far as possible, break down the far hand side on the left or the right and sort of cross back in these low percentage crosses. That's England's really only form of attack. They're not really trying to do anything up the middle, and it's very one dimensional, and it's very over reliant on one of Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, or Harry Kane producing a moment of magic and at altitude in front of an extremely passionate and tribal Mexican crowd. Might be a bridge too far, but it's been, if with all the obvious context surrounding this tournament going into this World Cup, I was tentative as to whether I was going to even watch it in the first place, let alone enjoy it. But I think even though there probably has been too many games, and I think this round of 32 hasn't been probably the best, I still think it has surprised me for the enjoyable moments it's produced.
Yeah, I think it like the previous two World Cups has a lot of aspects that concern me as well. I wasn't
Mm,
overly fond of them holding the World Cup in Russia, and I was proven correct because Russia were just like pretending to be nice. And then there's obviously misgivings about Qatar as well, and then
hmm
some of the off the field stuff and treatment of some of the teams has been lacking in terms of this World Cup as well. And then there's
Mm,
obviously also like the lot. I think if this was a few years ago when I first discovered football and somebody told me, oh, there's going to be like a 48 team World Cup, I'd be like, oh, I'm in heaven now. But the thing is, I discovered football, but then I discovered rugby as a young kid, and rugby was like gladiator sport mixed with chess, and I love both those things. So, but the thing is that Jacob, we only have so much time, so like I can't follow all these things. I always tell people like I like certain sports I like playing, but I don't really like watching it on TV. If I watch it with friends, and those sports are cricket and tennis. Because if I see tennis on TV, I'm like, I could just get on my bicycle and ride to the local like tennis club and play some tennis. So it can be kind of difficult for me. I will say though, I think shout out to all the African teams that were involved: Central Africa,
yes.
Southern Africa, and North Africa. Unfortunately, Ghana is our only hope. And shout out to my friend Chris Malumbu. He's a refugee who came to South Africa. Very good musician, by the way, Chris. So he was like both rooting for DR Congo and South Africa, but unfortunately both these teams are out now, thanks to you, Jacob. But
Yeah,
yeah,
me
shout out to
personally,
Chris.
I'm to blame for this.
You did that. And then my like I catch so little. My connection to this World Cup is in the morning I'll look at my phone and go, "Oh, Portugal went through," and then like my neighbor will tell me they didn't deserve to go through. I was like, "You were up at night." It's like the kickoff was like 3 o'clock. So yeah, even the games that's more like in the evening, I because of my schedule, I haven't been able to catch. Jacob, we'll go quick. We'll do the South Africa prediction last, but we'll go quick fire into New Zealand, France.
Yes.
Who you got?
New Zealand, France. It really hard to tell. How Dave Rennie is going to do as an All Blacks coach, I think is really really intriguing because I was a fan of Dave Rennie when he coached Australia. I think it was a huge mistake to drop him for Eddie Jones, and he's obviously was very unlucky in that. I think um, he'll probably bring a sense of consistency to the All Blacks they were lacking under Scott Robinson. However, if you'd have went to me, you could have had Scott Robertson as your head coach or Dave Rennie. I probably would have led more to Razor, but clearly the All Blacks players didn't believe that way. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's a huge game. The French have gone as strong as they could. There's no Dupont because of injury, but Maxime Lucu is like like Dupont is the best scrum half that we've probably seen since the Welsh scrum halves of the 1970s. But Maxime Lucu is also ridiculously world class. And then the other scrum halves below that, Baptiste Saran, Le Garec, are ridiculously international class, but not quite world class. So the scrum half roster that France have is insane. It's akin to the Springbok depth in the second row. It beggars belief, really. I think it's also being done at Auckland. It's being done at Eden Park. Obviously, the last team to beat the All Blacks there was the French, with the try from across the world in 1994. Will the French be doing that this weekend? Probably not. I think it will be very close. I think obviously New Zealand will have some teething issues. The French will be exhausted from a really, really long season in the top 14. Home advantage will see the All Blacks through, not convincingly though, probably All Blacks by five.
Yeah. I actually don't mind the fact that France don't play their necessarily quote unquote first team in this stage of the season. It's very mature of them to go Six
Agreed?
Nations, best
Yeah,
we can possibly go.
yeah, agreed.
June away test, July away test, because a lot of whoever's played a lot doesn't play, and whoever made the top 14 final doesn't play. Okay,
Yeah,
we've got other players, and players deserve a chance. So if you're in the French system and um, this window is where I can focus on, where I can get a chance. Yes, quote unquote, first team plays Six Nations and first team plays in November, but years where I can make a name for myself, years where I can show the coaches what I can do. It makes you feel a bit more involved within the system. There's some people like, oh, why doesn't France flog their players and play all of them all the time? And South African system's a bit different because we just constantly change, and there is a danger that you might start losing with that, but thankfully it hasn't happened. But I think it's extremely mature. So I'm gonna go. I think it's gonna be very similar to last year when France actually toured New Zealand, played a few games and lost all of them. I think France will
Mm.
have their moments, but New Zealand will overcome them. And this game kicks off at 10 past 9 South African time, so that's 10 past 8 UK time for the UK viewers. The next big game on the list is Australia versus Ireland, another very
Mm.
interesting game. I would think Ireland a bit ahead here, but what are your thoughts, Jacob?
Where are Ireland though? That's the question. In the Six Nations, they were so up and down. Andy Farrell has, I think, addressed some of the criticisms that he doesn't rotate enough, but he's still very reluctant to sort of build any depth, and I just think that's the wrong call, particularly for something like the Nations Championship, where he isn't going to get grief necessarily from the Irish media if Ireland don't do particularly well. I don't think there'll be the interest in it, and I think there would be a preference to build depth and build options. He's rotated where his hand has been forced by injury, or by James Lowe now leaving Ireland. With Australia, I think this is their first game under Les Kiss, but what's his face is still kind of around in an advisory. Schmidt is still around in an advisory role, so um, I probably would lean Ireland, but it wouldn't surprise me if on home soil Australia were to pull out something. Um, Australia do have a lot of good players, but do they have a lot of depth in the forward pack? No. Skelton's not there. Salakai Lotu's not there. Um, they've, yeah, I think, um, Australia have got like, eight world-class centres, but they don't have if they don't have like Skelton, then they're screwed in the pack. So, but obviously Tom Hooper has been playing superbly for the Wallop for Exeter in the Prem, as has Len Ikitau. So, yeah, I probably would say Ireland by 10. But it wouldn't surprise me if Australia did win there, because Ireland versus Australia I think is a very underrated rivalry, particularly because of Schmidt versus Farrell. I love that rivalry.
Yeah. It's gonna be very interesting. So that's at 10 past 12 South African time. So that's 10 past 11 UK time. The Fiji men versus Fiji versus Camry men, Welsh men. That's at 10 past 3 South African time, so 10 past 2 UK time. I'm looking forward to that because I
Yeah,
don't
me too.
know who to pick on a winner there. It's at Cardiff, but it's scheduled obviously as a Fiji home game because traveling to Fiji would have been a schlep. Um, yeah, I actually lean slightly to Fiji. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean Fiji have had Wales's number last time.
Mm.
I'm really looking forward to this game. I think Wales are building something under Steve Tandy. It's a long project, but I think what you saw in the Six Nations was an upward trajectory, which kind of materialized in that victory over Italy at home at the Principality Stadium. Fiji have just got ridiculous players everywhere. Vine and Kolo, Tuisova, Ravovo, I think, is on the bench. I think Frank Lamani is playing. He's obviously been around the block now for a little while. They don't have Caleb Muntz at fly half. They've got someone else whose name does escape me. This is also a first game under a new head coach, and their previous head coach has kind of left in very suspicious circumstances. That was very weird. Um, I think I think it'll be a fantastic game. I think if I think probably it being at the Cardiff City Stadium does probably help Fiji more than it does Wales men. I think that'll probably be a bit of a weird atmosphere for them, and they will have momentum obviously from the Six Nations. But if Fiji turn up, then it probably will be a close win for the Flying Fijian. So yeah, not sure how that's going to go for Cymru, but I think it'll be a good game, one I'm looking forward to watch.
Okay. We'll skip the South African game for now. We'll do that last, but later in the evening at 10 past 9 South African time, so that's 10 past 8 UK time. Argentina versus Scotland, very similar to the Fiji versus Wales game. I'm not entirely sure. This is in Argentina, by the way. Estadio Mario Alberto Kempes. I'm
Right.
leaning slightly Scotland.
Oh.
Just to make cat amongst the pigeons and make Police Commissioner Ben and Ethan's day.
I yeah, I'd lean Argentina.
Hmm.
I think again, Scotland also quite like to use their tours on a more development angle. I think they have gone strong for this game,
Hmm.
but Argentina at home. I would favour Argentina. I know Scotland will be sort of gunning to avenge the Argentinians defeated them at Murrayfield in November, but I just get as much as I admire Scotland and am a huge fan of so many of their players. My patience has just run out with Gregor Townsend, and I don't think they have the composure to withstand a hostile Argentinian crowd. And as long as Argentina don't do anything too stupid, I suspect it'll be a relatively comfortable victory for the I was going to say for the Los Pumas, not Jaguares, R.I.P. the Jaguares from Super Rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
for the Los Pumas.
who do I miss more, the Jaguares or the Jaguares mascot? The Jaguares mascot looks so funny. It's like a tall, sort of like jaguar type thing, very square.
Also,
Very,
I don't know if the well for the obviously for the audio listeners, I'm wearing the Adidas Stormers jersey. I loved those Nike Jaguares jerseys, man. I got one of them. I don't know if that says that I'm a bit fickle when it comes to not fickle when I'm a bit um I love my Adidas and Nike rugby tops, but my God, was that Jaguares rugby top an absolute stunner.
do,
But yeah, that their
do
mascot
you
was really funny.
do you collect rugby tops like Irish Adam and you?
No, not to the same extent. Obviously, I've been the recipient of many Leicester Tigers jerseys at Christmas, courtesy of my grandma, my mama. But I've just collected a couple of other jerseys, so I have the that still fit me. Naguara's jersey doesn't quite fit me anymore, but I have the Argentina away jersey from the last World Cup, whereas the Grenadios jersey, I thought that was awesome. I've got the Springbok jersey as well from that World Cup, and I have purchased the French Heritage, or I've pre-ordered because it obviously ran out. I've pre-ordered the French Heritage kit from the from last year's Six Nations. So yeah, I wouldn't quite describe myself as a collector, but I'm always on the lookout if there's a good bargain on a good rugby jersey.
Yeah, when it comes to rugby jerseys, Hugh Griffin and
He has
Adam
loads, doesn't he?
Latham, if you guys are watching this, you guys have a problem. That's actually, bro, but I guess I do a lot of physical activities, so I collect sort of singlets or like vests or whatever, like technical stuff that can breathe and
Yeah,
stuff. Especially here in South Africa in summer, I only run in or work out in sort of like singlets.
fair
So I
enough.
guess I guess I fall into that category on the other end. But it has been kind of cold of late. I mean, you English people showed up and you brought your weather. Was horrible today, by the way. Especially in the evening. But weirdly, it's only like my My phone is telling me it's a high of 14 right now, but it feels colder. Anyhow, that's neither here nor there. Before we get on to the final part of the show where we predict Springbok versus England, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell. If you're listening to this on audios, give us a 5-star review, please. It helps significantly. Yeah. And also, there are a lot of really good podcasts on this Global Gainlines YouTube channel, not just the South African podcast that comes to you twice a week, a preview pod and a review pod. Check us out on Mondays as well. And shout out to Culture Lab Kombucha once again for sponsoring the series of preview pods, even into the preview pod for the greatest rivalry tour against New Zealand. Jacob, it's the moment of truth. Prediction for South Africa versus England at Ellis Park.
Oh, tough. So England haven't won at Ellis Park in 54 years. So that's some winning record. Obviously, I think the optimism for England is that there's kind of a bit of a free hit into this one, and we're facing sort of like an undercooked South Africa side, even if that is even possible. I cannot see where you talk about Etzebeth and obviously coming back on second game after its ban. Obviously, there's lots of Japanese players. There's always a concern, are they sort of test match ready from their season in Japan? Against England, you're always going to be fired up. I think as a Box supporter, I cannot see that the Bokke being undercooked for this one. I do think it'll be close. I think England will have their own firepower. I think it's going to be very, very interesting, the battle between Lebock and Finn Smith, in terms of both tens are excellent at crossfield kicks. You've got outstanding wingers in Alanser and Colby, and then Theo Aboso is outstanding for England in terms of that ability, in terms of being able to be on the recipient of crossfield kicks, and you would argue that he could have the physical advantage over those Springbok wingers. With Furbank at fullback and with Murley on the other wing, I struggle to see how England can kind of formulate a kicking advantage over the Box. And yeah, I think it will be South Africa. I think it'll be like, I'm going to go the Bokke by 12, but kind of with 65 minutes on the clock, it's going to be like quite close. They'll only be like ahead of England by like 2 points, but they'll score like late on. I think the bench will see you guys clear.
Yeah, I think that's a key factor there in terms of the quality of the bench. There's some solid players on the England bench, but they're not quite there just yet. Yeah, the Springboks have gone full bore, not leaving any stone unturned. Could be an issue in terms of lock.
Yeah.
Peter Steph could shift in there. Peter Steph really made his name at lock through schoolboy rugby, and then was recruited to the Sharks as thought of as sort of like a Victor Matfield number 5, and then moved more into like the premier blindside flank in the world. So yeah,
I guess
I'm gonna
Hanekom could play there. Like, he's quite tall, isn't he? He's quite
yeah.
rangy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's good line out option as well. Look,
Yeah.
is he as sort of like tall as Rowan O'Keefe type thing in terms of like arms and stuff like that. So we might lose a step in terms of the line out throwing, but we're definitely not going to lose anything in terms of strength and that type of thing. So yeah, I'm going to take a leaf out of Lin-Manuel Miranda and the whole
Ah.
craze with the New York Knicks winning the NBA final. Shout out to Zohra Mamdani, New York mayor. So here goes nothing. It's just my captain's here, my coach is Rassi. England are always offside. Springboks by 5.
I like it, like it, like it.
So
And we've barely talked about Henry Pollock, so success. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
that
because
is an interesting aspect because some people don't like him and some people do like him. I'm very neutral about him. I think he brings a certain je ne sais quoi to the game. And I like
yeah,
his post try celebrations. I think
yeah.
it adds it to.
Great to have that character. I've been really impressed with his performances for Northampton in the semi-final and final. I think he's matured as a player, and he's doing the basics really well as the flashy stuff. I think he deserves his first start for England, just not against the Box. And I talked about earlier. I'm very much sort of like a glass half full, half empty with a lot of big things in rugby. Henry Pollock is one of them. I'm not someone who is like, oh, he's just, he's overhyped and he's all this. And again, I'm not someone who thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread. But I do think he gives England a lot of options off the bench. He gives them a lot of firepower. Um, I suspect Borthwick will maybe try and like use him as a bit of like a distraction for the Box, for him to sort of, there'll be a lot of players there who will want to like, make their presence known on him, or want to put a marker on him in tackles, in rucks, etc. And I think maybe that might be a bit of smoke and mirrors from Borthwick to kind of waste energy of the forwards on trying to make a point on Pollock, where you don't really need to. You can. Leicester showed when Leicester beat Northampton at Leicester in the East Mids derby, they showed that he can just be. Um, they showed him out to be a bit of a fool if he just tries to wind up people, but they don't do anything about it. But if the Box fall into the trap of, no, I'm going to show this little English kid what people from the High Veld are made out of, then that might actually be to the Box detriment if Borthwick does that to some sort of smoke and mirrors effect. But yeah, I think it's the right option to leave him on the bench. I think it would have been. I don't think England have the forward power across the pack to make up for him being at number 8. I think you get the best out of him coming off the bench.
Yeah, I said earlier in the week that I do rate him. I thought that he's really stepped up at club level. He's not yet stepped up at test level, but it takes time. Not everybody's a
Takes time.
phenom who's gonna like just burst in, and not everyone's Francois Steyn who was like so good and then got fat. Sorry, France. Um,
What a
uh,
player! What a
yeah,
what a player! What a unbelievable pint shot from the 2019 World Cup.
yeah.
What a legend!
Weirdly, he looks in better shape these days. Yeah, but he struggled with the calories in and calories out. So I think I got hurt by that because like when he returned to the Sharks, he was like wildly portly. I was like, is he gonna play tight head prop or center? Because he had so much, but he was always like as a 18-year-old and a 19-year-old, it was what we call this fris. He's sort of like a bulky, sort of a plump
Mm.
type player, which then allowed him to play. Francois Steyn, who made his debut for South Africa against Ireland in that special kit, playing wing of all places. So
Wow.
the thing about Henry Pollock though is it's also quite interesting is how he jumped Parsons, because Parsons isn't even in the national team setup on the fringes, because Parsons within that Northampton team was that sort of young forward coming through only on the bench, and then Pollock
Oh,
sort of
Pearson,
jumped.
Pearson.
Pearson, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean Pearson was also in the junior England setup as well.
Mm, mm.
So I mean he's not a bad player. People are saying he's a bad player now because Pollock jumped him. It's just this way things work.
It's really.
Progress isn't linear.
No, it's not linear, and it's really interesting how much Pearson being back for Northampton allowed Pollock to be much better and have more impact on the Saints side, because you had Pearson doing all sorts of the unflashy stuff. And yeah, I would not be against him being back in the England team. Potentially that ship has sailed. Borthwick's not one to give a lot of players second chances. But but yeah, I mean,
Where's the flank? Is he in the team? I don't know. The flank that grew up in New Zealand, the dreadlocks. What's his name?
Cunningham South.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's in the team.
Uh,
Again, Cunningham South is a very hot and cold player, and he hasn't been helped by Harlequins having a very poor season.
yeah.
So I don't believe he's in the picture. Um, but yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see what impact Pollock brings.
Mm.
Um, but I think, yeah, I think it's the right call to leave him on the bench and give
I
him,
thought that as well, to be honest. Like
yeah,
your exact thoughts. When I saw him on the bench, I was like, yeah, this is smart.
because you can
Make him the impact.
against any other nation, you can have Chesham at six, you can have Martin at five, Genge at loose head be your primary ball carriers, and then allow Pollock to do what he does best, which is kind of be an edge forward or be really
Mm,
quick off the scrum. And sort of you've combined with Curry and Earl to get turnovers against the box. You can't make that. You can't quite make that risk yet.
yeah.
So I think with quickly on George Martin as well. When the Box played England in the World Cup semi-final, he sort of took the Box by surprise with his power. He's not going to have that now. The Box, I think, will be out to target him, and I think that is something again that I think Borthwick hasn't quite sort of adjudicated for. That when George Martin played against the Box in 2023, no, not even I not even think I think Jasper Wiese and Andre Pollard, who are his teammates, knew that he had that sort of performance in him. So, but now with he's coming back from a lot of knee and shoulder issues. I think there's a lot of pressure on him to kind of deliver that same level of performance. And yeah, I think even with Chesham and Genge there, I think he's not going to quite deliver the impact that maybe Borthwick's expecting from him. Because there isn't the firepower necessarily coming from the centres. You don't have a Tuolangi or even a controversially a Janssen van Rensburg coming in from the centres to kind of add to that forward power. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But yeah, I suspect it'll be a Bok win.
Yeah, looking forward to a lot of rugby on Saturday. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for tuning in. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Thank you to Jacob. And thank you to our sponsor, Culture Lab Kombucha. Their links will be in there. Their social links and their links to their website will be in the description. Until Monday, as we say every week, in Rasi, we trust.